Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to be giving you all of the best settings for Call of Duty Vanguard. Now that the game has come out, a lot of things have changed since the alpha and since the beta, so there's a lot to go over. So we're going to go over the best audio settings, the best graphic settings, the best Nvidia filters for those of you who are on PC, as well as all of the other interface and controller and other settings in the game. So we're going to break all of that down. But before we do me a favor, man, smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on any upcoming Vanguard content here on the channel, man. I'm going to be bringing you guys all the tips, tricks, guides, gameplays, and everything in between, man. So stick around. And without further ado, man, let's get into the settings. First things first, let's talk about controller settings. So when it comes to stick sensitivity, I play on a 6.6, which to some of you that might seem low and to some of you that might seem high. This is a personal preference thing. This is just where I'm comfortable at. And a lot of the pro players actually play competitively around 6.6, 7.7 because it's very middle of the road, very good mobility as far as looking around and stuff like that, but not too crazy where you're not controlling your shots. When it comes to these multipliers here, I just leave it on default 1.0, but when it comes to the ADS sensitivity multiplier, I put it on 8.9. Now what this means is when I fully aim down sights, it's a little bit slower than when I'm completely aimed out of sight, so I can focus my shots a lot more. So I have my fast movement to zero my target in, and then I aim down sight and it slows down so I can easily trace them. And of course, with aim assist and everything, this just makes your aim really sticky onto the people. As far as custom sensitivity, presume I keep this off. Button layout, I play default. Keep all of this standard. This is really nothing. Now here, the game comes default in dynamic, I believe, but I recommend you switch to standard. There's a few pros who really like the dynamic. I don't really see anybody rocking linear, but I feel like the standard aim response curve type is the best overall. It's what you're pretty much used to, so I don't see a reason to fix something that's not broken. I personally play with controller vibration off. I find it highly distracting and just kind of pointless to me. I feel like it just kind of affects my shots if I had it on. Weapon fire threshold. This is a big setting now. This is something you want to disable because what it does, if you have it on, it simulates a gun trigger, right? So on the LMGs, you really have to pull that trigger all the way down, and the pistols, you can kind of tap a little bit faster and stuff like that. I turn that off. If I pull a trigger, I want it to shoot regardless of what it is. I don't want to have to pull a trigger more or less. Like personally, I have a SCUF controller, right? My controller has trigger stops. When I click the triggers, it stops at about halfway. But when I have that setting on, it doesn't even detect that my controller is even clicking. And I notice even with the default controller that it doesn't even register that you're clicking sometimes when you're trying to shoot your SMGs and stuff like that when you have that setting. So turn it off and your triggers are going to work perfectly. You're not going to feel like there's any delay or any times where you're not even shooting. I noticed just with my trigger stops on, there was times where I would hold the trigger down and it would act like I wasn't even shooting. It would just do nothing. It would just do nothing. So turn it off and now it registers the triggers a lot better. So go ahead and make sure you have that off. Now we're going to go ahead and scroll down to dead zones. On the trigger dead zones, I have it at about 13. That's what I found works for my controller. I think that's about where everybody really should be, unless you have like a damage or a really worn in trigger that's just really bad. You might want to raise or lower the dead zone depending on whether or not you feel it's registering. But here we have the input dead zone for your left and right stick. Now this is very important. I have mine about 4. I don't see a reason why you should ever have it higher than 10. And now what this does is the higher number you put it, the less sensitive your sticks are going to be. And this is important for somebody who may have stick drift in their controller, where if you set the controller down, it just kind of looks on its own or kind of moves on its own. You would raise your dead zone higher. You would turn that 4 to like 7 or 8 to make it not register that subtle movement of it moving on its own when you're not touching it. But if you put that number too high, then when you go to turn or sprint or move, it's not going to respond well to you because it's not going to pick up any of the inputs. So I think around 4 is good for most people. If you have a newer controller that doesn't have really crazy stick drift or anything, about 4 is what you need there. And then your max input dead zone right here, you want this on 99 and 99. You want to get the max potential out of your stick movement. So there you go. That's all really just the controller settings. It's not a whole lot going on here. We haven't got to the main meat and potatoes of the settings. Up next, we have the interface settings, and I keep this all pretty much default where it's at. I'm going to be honest, there's nothing crazy going on here. Profanity filter, I like that off. For me personally, I have the FPS counter on. This lets me see in the top corner right here what is my frames per second in game. I also put on my server latency so I can see my ping. That is my ping. It allows me to know like whether or not I'm lagging, as well as packet loss will tell me whether or not the server has lag or whatever. If I have a game where I have packet loss, I'm probably backing out so that way I don't, just lose a bunch of gunfights to bad connection to the server. Other than that, here you have, if you're on PC, you have your GPU temps and other information you could put on screen basically to see, to monitor your PC health. But most of that you can pretty much just keep off. Your HUD bounds, you want to keep this at 100. Vertical HUD bounds at 100. Be weird if you lower the number, all your HUD gets cluttered like towards the middle, and then you can't really see what's going on. So also, I keep the minimap on square. You can just tell from the image here, if you have the square minimap, you get more minimap. The round one, you cut off those corners and you have less minimap, less information, so you don't want to do that. Minimap rotation, you definitely want this on, so that way when you turn, the whole minimap turns with you, so you never get confused of what's left and what's right and what's not. You definitely need that minimap rotation on. Crosshair bobbing on. This is going to help you basically like track it while moving. It's just going to kind of move with you or whatever. So I recommend just keeping it on. It's going to help you with your hip firing and stuff like that. All of this I kept pretty much default. I'm not really changing any of this stuff. But now moving on to audio. Here we go. I keep master volume on 100 and music volume I turn down to 0. When I am in game, I want to focus on the gunshots and the footsteps and my in-game cues that I hear in my headset. I do not want to be hearing victory music or losing music or anything like that. Dialogue volume I turn down to 80. It's important to hear the characters' call-outs in-game. Like sometimes you can hear an enemy calling out a flash or calling whatever of their in-game stuff. So you want to be able to hear some of that, but you don't want it to be so overwhelming that you're not hearing footsteps or gunshots or suppressed fire or anything like that. Sound effects volume full 100. You definitely want this. And then hit marker volume, I turned down to 75. I didn't need the hit markers to be so loud. The hit marker noise that you get when you're actually hitting people, you don't want that to be so loud that you, again, can't hear footsteps or other action going on. Down here, you can change, do you want the classic hit marker sounds that you get from a bunch of previous CODs, or do you want the Vanguard one? I just keep it classic. It just feels nostalgic to me. This is important here. Audio mix, you definitely want to put it on headphones. Headphones is the best one, especially if you're rocking a headset like me. If you are, listening on earbuds or anything like that too, headphones is the wave. I feel like you definitely hear a lot more footsteps that way. Killstreak music, again, I keep that off. I don't want to hear any in-game music when I'm playing. I really want to focus on the sounds that's going on. Mono audio, you turn it off. The only reason why you would ever turn this on is if you had a one-ear headset, which is pretty rare these days. But yeah, so definitely you don't want mono audio. Sound device, whatever. I mean, this is my gaming PC, so I keep it on default system device. Voice chat on. I like to be able to hear comms from in-game on the game chat. This is all personal preference, just whatever setup you got going on. Voice chat volume, I lowered it down to 82. I found that the teammates' volume were so loud, and especially like in between games in the pregame lobby, man, people are screaming and saying all types of stuff. So I lowered it a little bit so it's not overwhelming that if I had a teammate talking or making a noise in their mic, that it completely distracts me from the game. And then I lowered my microphone volume. My mic is very sensitive, so I lowered it so that way I'm not just blowing people's ears out. I'm trying to be a little considerate. And here you have a fun little effect where you can add basically like little filters to your voice if you wanted to have a little bit of fun with it and change how you sound. Up next, we have graphics. Now, I personally play in a full screen borderless display mode. However, if you are on PC and you are not streaming and not using, you know, capture softwares and stuff like that, you definitely want to be on full screen. You're going to get the highest FPS possible out of all of the options. The full screen borderless is what I have to use in order to get passed through to my Elgato capture card. So again, if you're not streaming or creating content or anything like that, you can probably just get away with full screen. Obviously, my refresh rate, my FPS is capped to what my monitor is. So I play on 1440p. A lot of you guys will probably be on 1080p, 1920 by 1080. But again, this is kind of going to auto detect based off of what your monitor is and what you have running. So up next for graphics, VSync and all that, I turn that off. The custom frame limit, I enabled it. A lot of people have it on unlimited. I put it on. I don't want my in-game FPS for multiplayer to really go above 250. I'm not trying to fry my GPU or anything like that. And in the menu, I lowered it down to 120. I don't need crazy high FPS in menu for no reason, so I capped that. Aspect ratio, automatic. Definitely. Brightness settings, I play on 57 here. I feel like this is a pretty good. This says the middle one's supposed to be barely visible. I like it a little bit better than barely visible. So 57 is the right number for me. But that all depends kind of on your setup. So display gamma 2.2. Focus mode, I keep it off. Obviously, I'm playing on a 3090 graphics card, so it can pretty much detect that there. Now, on the graphics, we're going to go over to the quality tab, render resolution 100, so I'm still playing on my 1440p. Dynamic resolution, I keep that off. Other than that, I have a really high-end PC that's dedicated to the game, so I play on most of the settings on high. I lose some FPS here, but I'm still getting like over 150, close to 200 FPS in-game, running mostly high settings. Some of these I've lowered, like tessellation, I've lowered that to nearby only. It's kind of pointless to have that pretty much throughout the whole map. Just whatever's near to you have the improved rendering quality. All of these I keep on high. I just wanted the max visual, like what looks the absolute best here. So I'll kind of scroll through these. I definitely changed some of the ones towards the bottom. Again, all of these are pretty much on high. Ambient occlusion I had on both. GTAO I had it on high as well. The Nvidia DLSS, I turned it off. I found that when I had it on, I wasn't getting better FPS, and it kind of felt like the performance was weird. I feel like they definitely need an update here to get the DLSS running a little smoother. As far as my fidelity, turn that off. And anti-aliasing, I think it came with the SMAA T2X. I moved it over to the Filmic one, and then I also put it on low, and I lowered the Filmic strength down to 0. Now, this definitely made things look a lot clearer for me and took away a bunch of the blur that was going on. I turned depth of field on as well, and I basically set my VRAM usage target to about 85%. I would never want to go over, but as you can tell down here, I'm still only like maybe 25% on my VRAM usage. So there we go. And this is an important section here, the graphics gameplay section, and this is where you can change your field of view to 120. I recommend that if you can change to 120, you do it. You get to see a whole lot more. You can see in the image here on screen in the settings here that if you are on 80 FOV, which is default for console, you don't get to see as much of the room. Whereas if you play on 120, you see so much more of the room, and it also helps with your recoil management if you enable the affected ADS field of view. This is going to help you when you're aim down sights on this 120 FOV to make it seem like you have a lot less visual recoil than what you actually have. So it's definitely going to help you in gunfights. It takes a few days to get used to if you're used to just the regular 80 FOV, but you're going to feel like you're moving a lot faster. You're going to feel like you're snapping on target a lot faster. You're going to feel like it's easier to hit shots, in my opinion. Now, camera movement, this comes default on 100, and you need to lower this to 50, okay? This is going to help, like, alleviate, like, the camera shaking a bunch every time you're getting shot or grenades and things are going off. Your whole screen will shake and just be really ridiculous. So I lowered it down to 50%, which is the lowest you can go. So now my screen isn't just going all crazy and, like, I'm not having a seizure trying to just shoot my enemies. These are important right here. Please turn off world motion blur and weapon motion blur. Okay, this is gonna make it, you can clearly see on the left image here, it's very clear and crystal. In the right image, everything is blurry. You don't want anything blurry. You want clarity. You want to be able to shoot your enemies with no issue. And then I have my Nvidia reflex low latency on. I don't have it on with boost or off. I keep it on. I find that that's the best, most optimal section to have for that. So we went over audio, we went over graphics, we talked about the controller settings. Now let's talk about the filters. So I play with Nvidia filters on, and I will show you on screen what Nvidia filters I have. And all I did on filters, I went very simple, but here's what the game looks like without it. It's very dark and gray, a little less detailed. I put this on and I put color first, and I changed the tint color to 0, tint intensity to 0, temperature to -13.6, and vibrance to 62.8. Then I added a details filter, which I sharpened to 24%, added 71% clarity, HDR toning 31%, and bloom 0%. And now my game just looks a lot cleaner, in my opinion, a lot more vibrant. We'll go ahead and go to a private match real quick so you can basically see the difference. I will show you the difference that it makes when you drop into game as far as the colors and the clarity of everything going on. All right, so this is what the game looks like normally. After we've changed all the settings that we've talked about, this is what the game looks like. It's kind of gray, it's kind of gloomy, especially on a map like this where there's like a hurricane going on. But when we enable the filters that I just talked about, the game looks so much brighter, more vibrant, more clear. The gun, the details, everything just looks so much better now. And again, we'll show the difference here. Off and on. It's clear as day, like how much better the game looks when you enable these Nvidia filters. I really feel sorry for a lot of the console players who don't have this type of an option. But if you have an Nvidia GPU, this is definitely the move here. But as you can tell, when I'm moving around, everything is clear, crystal clear. There's no extra motion or extra blurriness or shakiness. It's a very clean process. So that way, when you're fighting, everything just looks good on your screen at all times. Very, very important to enable these if you can, because again, when your game looks like this, it's just gross. It's just gray. It's not attractive. But when you turn these filters on, man, the game just looks absolutely gorgeous. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is all of my Nvidia filter settings, gameplay settings, audio settings, as well as controller settings here for console and PC. I know a good deal of these were specifically towards PC players. That's because I happen to be one. But if you have any questions regarding any of the settings, please put it down in the comment section below, and I will try to get back to each and every one of you as much as I can to help you with your settings. Please subscribe to the channel for more tips, tricks, guides, gameplays, everything in between, man. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.